is like really good. Like, yeah, I I had Now X get nailed in one, and the way they called it in was not like that. Yeah.
Crazy.
But it was like one of those, like, turned left, got T-boned types of accidents, and the way they called it in, the ambulance was expecting not to recover a live person, and so it was like, oh yeah, I think that vouches for the safety on that. So if you want to know what that is, you should pay us money on our Discord, and we'll let you know the car in the comments.
We can talk about our personal photo problem.
You can support us on patreon.com/brokenjars. You can also visit our website, brokenjars.xyz. And welcome to another episode of the Dresden Files podcast. And today we're talking about Proven Guilty.
And how we need more sponsors
Part 5.
to pay for certain people's life events.
Choices. Yeah. Things. Okay. Moving on, because we got a lot. Maybe we get through everything this time, but probably going to be like 2 more parts because it's us, right? But last time, I'm pretty sure we ended on chapter 34. Dresden had just had Murphy turn around so that he could pick the lock to the movie theater, right? And so they've got Lily and Fix with them. We've got Murphy and Thomas and Charity. And we know that there's, I think, 4 fetches. There's 3 or 4 fetches inside. And they're ambush predators. Well, we're going to ambush the ambush predator because magic. And so we have the Fae doing what the Fae do best. And they've got Lily running the veil for everybody. She's cast mass invisibility, right? So Dresden kicks in the door and shouts, "And I'm all out of bubblegum." That's chapter 35. That's the whole thing. So no. But
even
it's
though he's very obvious, nice, delectable bait, nothing happens.
Right. Yes. What role should Dresden do? Well, he's bad at veils and he's got a big mouth. So he's the distraction. So, yeah, so we get in there. He goes down the hallway, and then he gets to a point where he's like, if I go further, I'm almost certainly going to get ambushed, but that's kind of the point, and I've just got to trust my friends to do the right thing, to do the thing we talked about and save my ass. And so so he's talking to himself out loud because still distraction, trying to work up his nerve, decides to move in, and then gets ambushed, and Team Dresden, Team Murphy, really, they counter ambush and put the thing down, right? So part of that I pulled out was Murphy's combat boot lashed out in a stomping kick that sent the fetch sliding across the floor. And the instant it was clear of me, she started shooting again. She put 6 shots in the creature, driving it over the floor, howling in pain, but thrashing with frenzied strength. The gun went empty. Murphy slammed another clip into the weapon just as the fetch began gathering itself up off the floor. She kept pouring bullets into it as fast as she could accurately shoot and stepped with deliberate care to one side as she did so. So yeah, just, I think it's just absurd. Like, if you're just sitting there and it's like she goes through like 9 to 12 rounds, drops the magazine, loads another one, and does it another 12 rounds, because it's just like, I think when you've got it in the text, it's like, yeah, I mean, okay, so she shot it a lot. It's like, no, that stuff takes time. It takes enough time where you would be like, she's been shooting for a while. How many rounds was that? So, let alone you got Thomas and his shotgun, you got Fix with his assorted weapons. I think he mostly uses a sword for a lot of this, but so that's fetch 1 more or less. So they all group up and they're like, oh, okay, well, so what's the plan? And Dresden's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So he headed for the doors and tried to project confidence. Same plan. I paused at the doors while everyone gathered behind me. I looked back to check if they were ready, which is why I was the only one who saw what happened. The plastic trash can about 6 inches behind Charity suddenly exploded, the top flipping off, and paper cups and popcorn bags flew everywhere, in slow motion, obviously. Something humanoid and no larger than a toddler shot from the trash can. It had red hair and overalls, and it had a big old kitchen knife in one tiny hand. It hit
Legally distinct Chucky,
right? Which is it's absurd because we have straight up xenomorphs, but then a lot of the other horror movie monsters, we've got to be like, oh well, what if like the fact that we said, oh, it's this monster, and we mentioned John Carpenter, like who's not going to get that reference? Like, I think we should just go all in. I don't know, like
Yes,
it's
but it's
kind of funny.
the fear of licensing and the fear of being sued.
But is it though? And like, I think we could do that with an email, is all I'm saying. Is like, hey, we want to reference this movie. Is that a problem?
Listen, later on, he
So-
apparently doesn't care because he does the whole lightsaber thing. So
Right.
I guess his
That's why I'm
licensing
just like,
fees.
Legally
That's
distinct lightsaber.
maybe that's why they started calling it a laser sword, so they could try and like, it's not just a lightsaber, it's also the laser sword. So all facsimiles are also trademarked.
I seem to recall John Williams' music also playing in the background when it first happened.
Probably, yeah. So I mean, that definitely is going to require some royalties. So all right, so it hit Charity just above her tailbone, driving her to the ground, and lifted the knife. My companions had been taken by surprise just a second or two, but as far as Charity was concerned, it might as well have been forever. There was no time for thought. Before I realized what I was doing, I took a pair of long steps, shifted my grip on my staff, and went and swung it like a golf club at the fetch's head. It impacted with a meaty thunk. Its head flew off, bounced off a pillar, and rolled to a stop not far from the rest of the thing. I had only just a second to regard the doll's features before it began dissolving to ectoplasm.
I have an intrusive thought.
Hmm.
All of these references are ones that Jim liked and has enjoyed. But
Okay.
of the current, I mean, if you were going to tailor this to modern audiences, these are outdated. Do the kids these days even know what Chucky is?
Okay, so once again, we got to have the anachronistic conversation because this is also Dresden, right? And the reason, like, Dresden is of an age with Jim Butcher, and so they have the same references. Is really what it comes down to. Is there another 3 foot tall? Like, should we do Annabelle with a knife? Is that what we're talking about? Like, what other murder doll has been in the last 20 years? 20 years is still an absurd amount of time to
Wasn't
make
there
a
one
pop
called
culture
Megan?
reference for that.
That was an
seen that?
android.
Oh, whatever. I didn't actually watch the thing.
Yeah. So
It had a music
yeah,
moment.
you heard sex doll and retained doll, and then no, I have no idea what Megan is either, but I don't recall any murder dolls, and like they've rebooted so many horror movies, right? But then some of those reboots are also aged because a coworker and I just yesterday were talking about the Halloween reboot with like Rob Zombie, and that's also like 18 years old or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean they
So-
did the next 3 with Jamie Lee Curtis and everything again, but they also did a reboot of Child's Play. It was only a couple of years ago with Mark Hamill.
Careful.
Place.
Yeah, was it
Careful.
2 or
Was
3
it
years ago?
actually a
Was this,
couple of
like,
years
12?
ago?
No, yeah, no, it was like
Yeah.
it was like 2022, 2023. It wasn't that long. Maybe 2021,
Sure.
but it wasn't that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for more specific references, but like, what other kinds of monsters will we put in here? Like that really is, I think, a fair question, because like these monsters are also kind of classics, right? So like, like, oh no, you've got a pumpkin headed, an alive scarecrow has come to kill and punish you. That's like 1,000 different horror stories. You've got a doll with a knife. Okay, so we called him Chucky or Bucky or whatever. They're archetypes, right? So maybe that's the argument, is that they're not specific references, they're archetypes. But
Also, they keep beating
So-
Alien to death, so everyone knows what that is still.
right.
That-
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean,
That's
Alien-
true.
So there's current, alien stuff running on. So, but yeah. I'm just trying to think. I'm like, I don't even know another kind of pint-sized creature. Like, unless you wanted another stupidly specific reference, like, some horror game or something like that. But having a Jack in the Box kind of horror thing with a knife, like archetype, so I don't know. If you come up with an answer, that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah,
Is
I don't know enough of horror to think of anything else that is small with a stabby knife, but just thinking
Well,
like
I mean, there's Pet Cemetery, but that was an actual kid.
Right. Yeah, but it's a fake kid. It's a construct body. It's okay. So
Oh no, I'm not. I'm just saying that's even more. Even though they remade that one not all that long ago. So
right.
there's no original ideas really. They come out with one for every cabin in the woods every 20 years. It's all the same retreads, and even that is an homage retread of sorts. So, although apparently the new one, why am I blanking on the name? With what's her face from Ozark, it's supposed to be very good. Hold on. Weapons, that's what it's called. That came out like a month ago.
I lost where you.
Oh,
went
the one with the
this.
kits?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is? Yeah, I haven't seen it.
I haven't either, but it's supposed to be good. So
Well, report
right.
back
It
when you can
seems
say for
it
certain.
seems interesting.
Yeah.
At least.
So there you go. Those are small people. I don't know if they kill anyone or not, but I will
Oh, is this
report
the
back
one
when I see it.
where it's like the kids keep disappearing and they just like run off? Okay, I saw like a trailer, but yeah, the name is like
Yeah,
generic
I was like,
you know,
I would never in a million years have guessed horror movie just based on the. If you had told me weapons and asked me what it was, horror movie would have been
Documentary.
right on
yeah,
the
right,
right on the bottom.
right.
I would have said action. I would have even said comedy first, but
Well, its first tag is dark comedy on IMDb, so you know,
yeah,
but
they
the
think everything
comedy,
with one or two jokes in it is a dark comedy.
yeah, no, I know. My favorite where I started paying attention to that was the last couple of years where it was like, you know, the bear wins like the comedy award or whatever. It's like, excuse me, you know, like there is some humor in there, but it is far from being called a comedy. And it's just it seems like the categories are not broken down enough.
Yeah, it
And
wouldn't
so
even
it's
be a
like
dramedy.
you're either yeah, but that's the problem, right? Is like the rewards are largely like focused in on is it a drama or is it a comedy, because it's like it's a drama or it's everything else. And it's like, I mean, still though, the bear is a drama, but they like to try and get into the comedy side because drama is everything, you know, like there's so much stuff in drama.
Yeah,
And it's
if
like
your show is heads
that's
and tails
absurd.
above everything else and you want to win an award, put it in comedy because you
Right.
know it won't necessarily beat the other thing.
They're like, Richie's a comedian, right? So, you know, anyway. Okay, moving on. Some internal monologue and stuff, but this kind of informs for, you know, the character and the moment and everything like that. But they're getting ready to go in, or at least in Dresden's mind, he's getting ready to go in. Lily's opened the veil and everything like that. And anyway, so I turned back to the dancing lights on the movie screen and told the others things just got a lot worse. I'm still going, oh yeah, they just realized it's like actual Arctis tour, you know, the heart of winter and whatever. It's like, I'm still going. None of you have to come with me. I don't expect you to. Before I finished speaking, Charity, Murphy, and Thomas stepped up and to stand beside me. A bolt of warmth, fierce with joy and pride and gratitude, flashed through me like sudden lightning. I don't care about whose DNA is recombined with whose. When everything goes to hell, the people who stand beside you without flinching, they are your family, and they were my heroes. And so it's just like, you know, we got to get the Michael Scott, like all teared up, you know, moment going on. So, but, so chapter 36, now we're in, you know, the Fae, like we're skipping over a bunch of stuff, right? Trying to keep focused on some of the details, but like Lily and Fix stay behind. Lily's trying to keep the portal open, you know, because in case they have to make a hasty retreat. And how do you talk
There's a
to
butterfly.
her?
Butterfly's important.
I was getting there. You patience, grasshopper. So she's got to stay behind because it's like, how do you get a message to her to say like start the car when you're running from, you know, the horde of Fae that you're going to be doing? They give him a butterfly so that it can keep him warm and everything like that. And they're playing it very low key with the whole like, you know, we'll stay behind so that we try not to anger Mab so much. And then of course Fix has got to stay behind to protect Lily because she's going to be busy with the portal. So he stands. Does he stay inside the theater? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I think he stays in. No, he comes out because he wants to stop anything from getting through, you know, basically. So So he's going to stand guard and everything. And they're like, this is kind of what we do. And, we're doing it for charity, not for Dresden. So Titania can suck it. So, but yeah, they give him the little butterfly to keep him warm and everything. So then we do the whole, fellowship in the snow thing. Dresden trying to cut through the snow like Gandalf and everything like that for, the Hobbit Murphy behind him. Everybody's wearing their armor. And it's like, yeah, pretty much if they didn't have that butterfly, they would have frozen to death in the chainmail because, that's not good.
I would like there to be a detail of Thomas is still like too sexy for his own good and not dressed for winter. And like just, to make whoever that person is to be tortured by like having to be half dressed in a blizzard.
I mean, if we really wanted to meme it up a little bit, like they're all wearing chainmail that Charity made. So somehow he's got the sexy chainmail. Does he just get a bikini?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Like, is that how we do it? Because I'm like, how does his armor become inexplicably sexier than everybody else's? And yeah, I think that's the answer.
Or like an open chainmail vest of some kind that's still showing off his, like a V-neck
huge guns
chainmail.
So yeah, there you go. Yeah, because everybody knows that the armor protects you better the less it physically protects you. So
it's got
metaphysically protecting him. Yeah. So all right, let's see. So description for Arctis tour that they're heading to and everything like that. Mab's stronghold was a fortress of black ice, an enormous shadowy cube sitting high up in the slope of the highest mountainside. I gotta say, I have read this like 6+ times, and I did not ever get the shadowy cube reference. I have always imagined it as like a giant, like, whatever it is, stalactite, stalagmite. I can't ever keep them straight, but it's like, it's an inverted icicle, right? Or whatever, the classic fortress of ice, but this says it's a shadowy cube. So maybe it's the spire part that gets me, but it's like a single elegant spire rose above the rest of the structure. Flickers of green and amethyst energy played within the ice of the walls. I couldn't make a good guess at how big the thing was. The walls and battlement were lined with inverted icicles. So that imagery, but it's like, yeah, okay. But also a cube, fun, I guess. And then they're walking, and then all of a sudden things start to get weird and unexplained, as in, I passed the first bones 50 yards from the walls. They lay in a crushed, twisted jumble in the snow, frozen into something that looked like a macabre Escher print. The bones were vaguely human, but I couldn't be sure because they had been pulverized into dust in some places, warped like melted wax in others. It was the first grisly memory of many. I kept going forward, brittle, frozen bones crunched under my boots, lying closer and thicker and twisted more horribly as we drew closer to Arctis Tor. By the time we got to the gate, I was shin deep in icy bones. They spread out on either side of an enormous wheel of horrible remains centered on the gate. Whoever they had been, thousands of their kind had perished here. I always remember the trolls, but not these things. So it's like, did she have goblins, or just were those other fae? Like, that was a lot of dudes. So, and there's some other part, I don't know if it's up ahead or whatever, but it's like they have to crawl through a tunnel on mounds of bones, and it's like the French catacombs, it's just like level of detail and shit. It's like, that's a lot. So the black ice walls of Arctis Tor were 60 feet thick, and walking through the gateway felt more like walking through a railroad tunnel, except for all the bones. So right here, every breath, every step, every rasp of bones rubbing against one another multiplied into 1,000 echoes that almost seemed to grow louder rather than fading away. The bones piled higher as I went, forcing me to walk atop them as best I could. The footing was, oh geez. I tried to edit something, so it's forced reload now. So I love it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I should try to remember to do that before we go into this. It's like, oh yeah, there's an extra space there. Let's just get rid of that. Nope. Reload the whole thing. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so the bones piled higher as I went, forcing me to walk atop them as best I could. The footing was treacherous. The deep green and violet, and occasionally red or green pulses of luminance in the black ice walls did nothing to light the way. They only made the shadows shift and flow subtly, degrading my depth perception. Started feeling a little carsick. So there's that, and then I think they open up into the big courtyard where, you know, one of their two main fights happen while they're here in Arctis Tour. But you know, internal monologue again, but my magic had a risky batting average against these creatures, but there were things I could do besides hosing energy directly at them. Hellfire came to my call, and my staff's runes exploded into light as brilliant as a magnesium flare. Their flame lit the benign courtyard while somehow not damaging my clothing or flesh. My will and hellfire roared through me in a torrent as I whirled the staff in a circle over my head and screamed, Ventus Sicklis. So some context that I didn't include here, but they get into into Arctis Tour and everything like that in this courtyard, and basically above them is like, you know, polar vortex, right? And so Ventus Sicklis, he starts drawing that power down to use that, which it's like they're still winter fae, but you know, at least he's not trying to throw raw fire at them, I guess. So yeah, right. The howling winds thundered down into the silent courtyard as if I had torn off an unseen roof. They gathered along my spinning staff, fluttering with lightning the same color as the blazing runes on the staff. Scarlet, presumably. I cried out and hurled the winds, not at the oncoming fetches, but at thousands of bones lying between them and me. The wind picked them up in a wailing shriek of a sudden cyclone of broken bones and shattered armor, spinning them into a whirling curtain. The lead fetches were too late to avoid plunging into the cloud, and the ossified tornado began to rip them apart, battering to pulp wherever it was not, sheared away by the edges. And ice covered the parapet, somehow formed into ghostly trees and flowers. Let's see. Oh, it must have cut off my thing. That's nice. So anyway, so there's more to that fight, but I had to break this up in between a couple of notes due to character limits. So gotta love it. So yeah, they survive. I think a big part of it is that Murphy and Thomas stay behind to deal with any of the stragglers that didn't get pulled in by Dresden's thing. They start hearing Molly screaming from higher up in the tower. So Charity runs off. Dresden follows her and whatnot. I think. No, I guess I skipped over the door part, unless that's, yeah, I think we skip over the door part for some reason in these notes. But I mean, this is the part where Charity is like, you know, instead of calling for Fezzik because they've barred the door, she just pulls a warhammer and smashes it, but it's, you know, iron and steel. And so it explodes, you know, and kind of like maims Charity. She gets icicle in the leg, you know, in the thigh, I think. So that's one of her first battle wounds and everything like that. But they continue. So they continue to proceed. And then they come up to, you know, another courtyard, basically. So
the garden. It's Map's garden.
Well, we're going to get there. Do you want me to read this? Or
like,
are we going to do that?
That was the interlude. We did that.
Are we gonna do the whole like you know, the Princess Bride thing? Like, you know, like, yes, you're so smart. Now shut up. Like, let me read the thing. Let me do the thing. I got notes. So I know we're getting to the garden. We'll get that description too, I promise. So yeah, I mean, so the description we've got right now is ice covered the parapet, somehow formed into ghostly trees and flowers. There were seats and they're in the garden. See, like 3 seconds. And they too were made of ice. A frozen fountain stood silent at the center of the parapet. A bare trickle of water sliding from the top of a statue, so coated in layers and layers of ice that one could not readily identify its particulars. Replica rose vines and thorns spread all around the place, all ice, all cold and beautiful. another description I pulled out here. Upon the branch of a tree perched a cardinal, its blood red feathers brilliant, though the bird itself was utterly still. I peered a bit closer and saw that it was covered in a layer of transparent ice, frozen into a sculpture every bit as much as the rest of the place. Not far from it, a spider's web spread between some tree branches. The spider at the center also transformed into an ice sculpture. A swift look around showed me more beings entombed in ice, and I realized that this place was not a garden. It's not a garden. It's not.
It's a tomb.
Yeah, right. And yet more description. So, props department and costume, they can have a field day with this one. But next to the fountain sat a lovely girl in a Byzantine gown, hand entwined with that of a young man in similar historic costume, except, not costume, because probably period accurate, all that stuff, right? So not far from them, 3 females of the She Mab's kindred, the nobility of fairy kind, stood back to back, their shoulders touching in a triangle. The 3 looked so much alike that they might have been sisters, and they each held hands with the others, expression of determination and fear frozen onto their faces. The ice sculpture of a thick, dead-looking tree held a dead, naked man upon it, crucified on its branches as a grotesque work of art. Bonds of ice held him there, transparent enough to let me see the blackened flesh in his hands and feet, the gangrenous darkness spreading up toward the veins in his arms and legs. His hair was long, unwashed, and fell over his face as he hung limp with his bonds, his body coated with layers of crystalline frost. Molly sat at the base of the same tree. Her artfully shredded clothes had been shredded in truth, and they hung from her as loose as rags. Her cotton candy hair hung in a limp mass, uncombed and tangled. She shuddered with cold, and her eyes stared at nothing. Her expression was twisted as if in effort, her mouth open. It took me a minute to realize that she had never stopped screaming. She damaged her throat, and no sound would emerge. But that didn't stop her from trying. And I mean, if that doesn't convey the true horror, I don't know what would. It's just like craziness. So let's see. Yeah, so that being said and everything like that, the big fetch appears, the jack-o'-lantern, whatever we're calling him now. I can't recall, but the head fetch and everything like that, as Dresden started to put this to be together. But he's holding Molly, and Dresden, of course, is in a Snarkoff, right? The Scarecrow. So such a difficult word to remember. So, but basically now we've got Dresden and his Snarkoff, and they're throwing power at each other and that sort of thing. But I had to be careful. If I spooked him too much, he'd kill Molly as a prelude to closing with me. You know what your problem is? I asked him. He stared at me for a blank second of incomprehension. What? I showed my teeth in a wolfish smile. You underestimate people. While I'd drawn the Scarecrow's attention and eye, Charity had slipped around behind it, silent as a puff of smoke. As I spoke, she lifted her sword and swept it down at the appendage holding her daughter. The steel blade hissed and flashed and seared its way through the limb holding Molly. The Scarecrow reared its head back in a sudden howl of rage. Molly's body bucked in panic as the severed limb contracted on her throat. I lifted my staff and snarled, "Fazare!" Unseen force lashed out, caught Molly up as gently as I could manage it, and flipped her tail over tea kettle away from the creature. No sooner had I moved her than its stumpy arm swung down and smashed into the ground where the girl had been sitting. So now we fighting. But the Scarecrow turned to grab at Molly, but Charity stepped into its path, a cold steel gleaming, her eyes harder and colder than the black ice of Arctis Tor. She faced the thing squarely and snarled, "You will never touch my daughter again." The creature roared in fury and rushed Charity. I whipped my blasting rod and snarled, "Fuego!" A lance of flame as thick as my wrist lashed out from the tip of my rod and died 2 feet away from it. The burning energy of the magical strike swallowed by an unfathomable ocean of cold power. I had hoped that I could get a shot in while the Scarecrow was distracted, but I had already decided on what to try next if I couldn't. I stuck the blasting rod through my belt, whipped my staff up to point the tip at the ground beneath the Scarecrow's feet, and shouted, "Fazare!" Invisible force lashed out and struck the black ice under the scarecrow like a mortar round. It threw the creature 10 feet into the air, spinning it end over end. Deadly chips of black ice flew. As the spell's energy roared out of me, I staggered and almost lost my balance. My vision tunneled for a second or two of pure exhaustion. I'd been pushing too hard for too long with no rest. The magic I'd been using had drained my reserves entirely.
Name a
human
more
body-
iconic duo than this, Dresden and doing that.
Right. The human body has its limits that cannot be circumvented, and I had reached mine. So more or less he collapses, and the scarecrow's got Charity and Molly, and he's going to kill him, and he's gloating, and his things are going to be delicious, I'm sure, et cetera, et cetera. And then a little butterfly comes down, and I can just imagine a flaming moth, like the scene with Gandalf, where it's just like, hey, stupid, the eagles are coming, And, I stared at it for a second, realization dawning, and then I burst out into a weak laughter. Lily, you manipulative, deceitful, wonderful girl. If this works, I'll buy you a pony. But that's a different line, but still, So he's got a thing for this, apparently. So he likes his women tricksy, apparently. But
Maybe
That's
just like
a true
phones.
statement.
yeah. Yep. So what is it? Shoot, I'm botching the reference, but is it Earth Angel from Back to the Future? So anyway, so Dresden's sitting there slowly fading into oblivion, and then he touches the the butterfly, and then he just snaps right up. I found myself on my feet, arms spread to my sides, face turning upward, up toward the enormous silver moon. Sunlight seemed to spill from me, to wreathe me in dancing fires that had blazed their defiance of winter. Arctis Tor itself, the fortress of black ice, groaned in protest at the intensity of the light. I looked down to find the creature staring at me in utter shock. Its tendril fingers had gone loose, and Molly and Charity lay moving weakly at its feet. You cannot do that, the fetch said in a shocked tone. It's not possible.
Does your eyes deceive you? I'm doing it. You're watching it. Like,
Does that count as a lie from the Fae? It's like you can't do that while watching that they are doing it.
They can be mistaken without it being a lie. So, yeah. It's like calling something unnatural when it's like you find it in the wild to be like, seems to be natural, So, all right. I flicked out a hand, whispered a word, and my blasting rod flew from the ground where I dropped it and into my hand. Its carvings burst into light as the blazing heat of 1,000 Julys welled up, ready to fly free. You movie villains. You like movie villains, do you? I lifted the blasting rod while summer fire flickered around my outstretched arm. I peeled my lips back from my teeth and purred, "Have you seen this one?" The scarecrow let out an ear-splitting, trilling chirp, like a summer locust on steroids, and it bounded to one side in an effort to keep the mounded ice of the fountain between us. I'd already seen how fast the fetch could move and didn't bother with a snapshot. Instead, I let it distance itself from me, from Molly and Charity, until it reached cover behind the fountain's ice and stopped moving. Then I blew 2/3 of that dome away in a single blast of light, thunder, and fire. The golden summer flame hammered straight through the ice into the scarecrow. The old fetch was taken off guard, and the lance of fire incinerated what would have been a hip and thigh on a human being. It bellowed a metallic roar of pain and anger, bounced off of one of the white marble statues of the three sisters, and was forced to seize hold of one of the statue's ankles to keep from bouncing over the edge of the parapet. Still not a garden. Just kidding. So, but
Was he pulling on Mab's ankle?
yeah, right. Yeah. So
And she kicks him like, get off.
is she like there right now, or can she just like possess it later?
I think she's there
she's-
hiding.
He's the middle sister
Yeah.
because the other two are just
Well,
twins.
yeah. I mean, we know that she was going to wink at him later, right? But I'm just saying, is she there the whole time, risking getting blown up, or does she, possess it later?
She has to
But,
make sure that things go close enough to whatever she wants in terms of like Harry
Yeah,
and
she's
Leah
guarding
and
her.
Molly.
She's guarding her
Mhm.
stuff.
I mean,
Yeah.
where else would Mab be if Arctis Tor is under assault, as it has been twice in an hour for her from her perspective? She's going to be in the garden with the wellspring.
Sure. Yeah. There's more fighting. I'm going to skip through some of this, but basically Dresden and the Scarecrow are playing a little bit of cat and mouse. It keeps trying to get back to Charity and Molly. Dresden keeps it on the ropes and everything like that. But yeah, I guess this one is, it's running towards Charity and Molly, and Dresden tries to flick fire at it, but it's too nimble and dodges out of the way. The Scarecrow hurled toward Molly. Charity laid perfectly still beside her, sprawled on the black ice, but only until the Scarecrow came within reach of her sword. Then Charity rolled and popped up into a low, slashing lunge. Her sword seared its way through the Scarecrow's undamaged leg, slicing it off at an angle that began at mid-thigh and finished just above the knee. It frantically rolled again, struggling to get out of sword range. Charity pressed ruthlessly, too close to the damned fetch to let me blast it again. The Scarecrow hopped and skittered on its remaining limbs, heading for the edge of the parapet. Charity, I shouted, down. And then she like immediately hits the deck, which it's like, that's discipline, right? It's like, anyway, so skipping a little bit here, but I unleashed the fire again, this time so brilliant that it lit the dark mountainsides 5 or 10 miles away, so hot that the blowing snow hissed to instant steam in the wake of the flame. When it struck the fetch, it detonated into a blinding conflagration and explosion that roared so loudly that it shattered over every icy replica of a rose vine upon the parapet. I think what happens is like the fetch is trying to get away, and then it does the Aku thing where it turns into like a bat, it turns into a bat that Dresden's like, wait, I've seen bats like that around Fairy, and it tries to fly away. And so it just lines up in the moon like a big old target, and he's just like, kaboom, so. What tumbled burning from the fairy skies toward the merciless mountains below could not have been identified as anything in particular. It trailed sparks, soot, and ash, and when it slammed into a granite cliffside, it hit with such a force that an icy rock slide was jarred loose from the mountain slope, burying the fetch under incalculable tons of stone. I shook my staff at the rock slide in primal gesture of triumph and shouted, "Who's next?" Lloyd Slade is apparently next. So, but
everyone's next.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so I skipped over a lot of the Lloyd Slate stuff, but I think in this section it's like, he finally has a conversation. It's like, holy crap, he's still alive and everything like that. But then, they hear the howls and everything from like all of winter, and then it's too perfect not to be delivered as an Aliens reference in my mind, but Dresden, over his shoulder is like, Charity, we're leaving, but like Marines, we're leaving, so anyway. So let's see. Oh, and then, on their way out, there's like, a coughing sputter and Leah is there. So let's stop and have this conversation. But Dresden is like insistent on trying to free her, which almost is terribly bad. But I just pulled out the end of it. But it's like, no time, she said, voice strained again. I cannot keep it from taking hold of me. She shuddered and lowered her head. She lifted her face to me a few seconds later, and the madness had returned to her eyes. Wait, I've reconsidered. Free me. Like, yeah, fucking no.
Like whatever it is that she wants, he's doing the opposite of like, right. She says, leave her there. And he's like, no, I'm going to free you because I'm going to help. And then she's like, yes, free me. And it's like, absolutely not.
Yeah, right. Well, she at least gets in the part about where she's been tainted and corrupted and whatever. And Dresden knows how quarantine protocols are supposed to work, and just be like, but my fairy godmother, she's, even on her best of days, she's a threat to Dresden, let alone if she's been corrupted by some outside will. Like, give me a break. Yes. So
her ideas of helpful are also twisted and demented, just like his. And then Thomas walks in too. It's just like, she's creepy with them.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
She's creepy, period.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
And then the reference that we haven't brought up like 4 times already. So, and then just as I was leaving, only for an instant, I thought I saw one more thing. The triangle of statues of she noblewomen caught a stray beam of moonlight, While thin clouds made it jump and shift, in that uncertain light, I saw one of the statues move. It turned its head toward me as I left, and the white marble of its eyes was suddenly suffused with emerald green, the same color as Mab's eyes. Not just the same color, Mab's eyes. The statue winked at me. So, you know.
That's what happens sometimes.
Right. Let's see. Okay. So they're on their way out. Thomas runs up to meet them, and Harry's like, "Oh my God, Karen!" He's like, "Relax. She's holding the tunnel, like she's fine. She didn't die." So then they start running out. They make decent time back, etc., and everything like that. But ogre things start to catch up to them. So, yeah. So, let's see. They were being slowed down by the armor. So Dresden has a bunch of them take off their armor, ties it up into a bundle, and then hands it to Thomas. And it's like, but why me? And it's like, because you won't get slowed down by carrying like 200 pounds worth of steel,
Yes,
this.
he is
And
superhuman.
right. Yeah.
Work with.
Right. And we don't dare leave this behind. Well, why not? Because would you want someone leaving nuclear waste in your backyard? Yeah, good point. So now we got Thomas running with this like gigantic bundle of chainmail and everything like that.
But somehow still sexy.
Right.
Like, inexplicably sexy. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Dresden's like, well, you're probably going to have to slow down these snow ogre thingies because, they're catching up and everything. So, got it, Thomas said. And then when the first of the snow ogres was maybe 30 feet away, my brother took 2 steps and bounded into the air. The top of his jump was about 10 feet off the snow, and when he came down, he held the saber in both hands. The iron weapon sliced cleanly through the ogre's breastbone and filleted the monster, splitting him open like a steaming baked potato. Its fairy blood took flame, purple and deep blue, and gouted in a blaze of streaming energy. So we've got that, and then Dresden waxes poetically about the different styles of sword fighting and whatever, and how he's got like a straight blade, but he's a fencer, etc., etc. So I played to my strengths. I let a howl of my own to match the ogres, and when the one with the club drew near me, I swept it over my head in a wind-up. I lunged low and quick and drove about a foot of cold steel into its danglies. I twisted the blade and rolled out to one side as I withdrew it. The club came down on the snow where I'd been. Fire fountained from the ogre's pelvic region. The ogre screamed and ran around in panicked agony. The ogres coming behind it slowed their steps, their charge faltering, until the ogre keened over and fell into the snow, the fire and cold iron consuming it. They stared at their fallen comrade. Hey, I don't care what kind of fairy or mortal creature or hideous creature you are. If you've got danglies and can lose them, that's the kind of sight that makes you reconsider the possible genitalia-related ramifications of your actions real damned quick. Like, where do we put that line in? Because that's all in her monologue, But it's got to be there. So maybe it's a post briefing with Thomas, like what happened with the ogres, But
maybe Thomas turns around and the was like, "What happened?" or "Where is it?" or something, and then then he says the thing.
Right,
doesn't have to be after. I guess I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, so they get back, and Fix has got most everybody through the portal and everything, and then it's like, what's going on? What's happened? Whatever. And Dresden, I kind of threw a bunch of summer fire around Mab's playhouse and blew up most of this frozen fountain thingy. Fix's mouth dropped open. You what? The scarecrow was hiding behind the thing, and so I put Charity's sword down and waved a hand. Kablooey. Fix stared at me as if I'd gone insane. You poured summer fire into winter's wellspring. So
you have just caused World War III.
Yeah.
When in Rome,
right.
I mean, to
they
be fair,
threatened my people,
What did Mab expect? Mab
Right.
expected exactly this.
Oh yeah.
She planned for it. It's just now she gets an excuse to go to war again. Yeah. against different people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this whole thing is her playing everybody else in some way, right? Like everybody thinks they're going to get one up on her, and somehow she's one step ahead to a point that we still don't understand the full ramifications, right? Because it's like we still don't fully understand who attacked Arctis Tor, what they hope to accomplish, and what happened, to my knowledge. And so it's like, was Nicodemus directly involved, or was it just other Denarians because Hellfire was involved? Was it some other group? Because it's not like Hellfire is specific to Denarians. They're just the only ones we've seen employ it so far, right? And did they think
There
they
are 30
were gonna-
Denarians, so insert whichever one.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a much fewer number that are associated as being casters specifically, right? So that's where it's like we think it's Thorn and Namshiel, and Dresden calls him out as much, right? I believe, and all of that stuff is that he was playing on the side, and I think in like small favor we start to get some of those pieces together, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
when he assumes Thorn Namshiel is the one who attacked Arctis Tor, which would be interesting if that does come home to roost because of Marcone and all that now.
sure. Yeah, so there's all of that, but it's like, did they accomplish what they thought they were going to accomplish? And then it's like Mab's got like all of these bones, and it looks really bad for Winter, but like at the same time, she needed to clear the way for Dresden. So like, even though like all of those soldiers died, it worked sort of to her benefit.
I think the
And,
cause is okay.
you
So
know.
I'm not sure if you're laying out the cause in the same way I am. I think Mab
Right.
was under siege,
Uh-huh.
and then she set up the fetches to go get Molly to make Dresden come and then destroy things and then help her. Dresden is her access of routing the enemies that were hurting Arctis Tor and getting Molly involved with Fairy and getting Dresden involved with Molly, importantly, with Rashid and Uriel's help, in my opinion, because if the Carpenters are involved at this extent, Uriel's involved. And
Sure.
Rashid is the one who sent him the fucking letter in the beginning. And so that's why it's definitely those three of them trying to protect Arctis Tor and Winter against the outsiders and Denarians.
I do like the idea of her somehow luring Dresden in to deal with whatever the incursion is in some way. But the one quibble I would have is that the bones, like, they're an indeterminate age, but somewhere between like weeks and years, right? Obviously, I can't.
Time.
Right. And it's like, I can't imagine it's been years since she's replenished her guard, for example. So it's just Fairy being weird, right? But I don't think it was like happening simultaneous. And there's no other clues, unfortunately, that the Denarians, like if it's Thorn and Namshiel, and presumably he had a whole team, it wasn't just him, but though maybe he could have done it by himself. It's like they're not still in the what?
Weren't there ogres there as well? That like wild fae ogres, not just winter trolls.
Was it wild fae? Because I thought they were the only ones that I keep in mind were the like Mab's honor guard, basically. So
I don't remember the specific thing, but yeah, there was an implication that it was a Denarian or whoever with the Hellfire, plus a team of other people who were attacking. And even though Mab could share some of these details, presumably she hasn't.
Right. Of course. So, because it's need to know, and he doesn't need to know. So
and
he just needs to obey.
Ask the question.
Right. Yep. I don't know. I got frozen with a second because I was like, what if this is one of the time travel shenanigans? What if Dresden was on the team?
On the team defending Arctis or on the team attacking Arctis Tor?
Yes.
Either?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm thinking, yeah, it was like, what if it was another skin game type of thing where it's like he and Thorn and Namshiel have to go break into Arctis Tor to get a thing, and that's why it hasn't been explained yet, is because like it's complete bullshit, right? It's complete nonsense, but
this is a book that presumably already has time travel in it, given the way we assume about Little Chicago and the car crash.
Right.
And so sure. And that would also support.
It doesn't not fit, but there's a big old hole here, so a lot of things could fit, so
that would give more credence to the idea of Mab messing with time in Arctis Tor to do something to allow for something else happening in the rest of Chicago to get something. It has to slip a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would it be?
She needed all of this to happen, not to get Molly there, but to get Murphy there, so that Murphy's not a cop, so that when this craziness in Chicago happens, Murphy gets killed and she goes to work for Odin, who, no, I mean, I'm almost thinking like a Faye almost, but I need like 2 or 3 more brain cells to get there. But like, yeah, I'm just saying you heard it here first. If that's what happens, that's all I'm saying. So, you know,
Imagine what would happen if Dresden asked fucking questions.
that's what we got, that meme where it's like the golden city in the background to be like Chicago if Dresden asked 3 fucking questions. You know, instead of the Titan having just leveled most of downtown, we could have had like the space age, you know. So
yeah.
Dresden could have hot showers. So let's see, I think we've got like 8 chapters left to go. So let's finish this one out because we haven't finished chapter 40 yet, but let's see. So Thomas sat down on the other side, watching as he touched the lump on his head. Harry, Thomas said, remind me why we keep hurling ourselves into this kind of insanity. I traded a smile with Murphy and said nothing. We all 3 of us watched as Charity, on the floor in front of the first row of seats, clutched her daughter hard against her. Molly leaned against her with a child's gratefulness, need, and love. She spoke very quietly, never opening her eyes. Mama. Charity said nothing, but she hugged her daughter even more tightly. Oh, Thomas said. Right. Exactly. Right. So, yep. All right. So they go back to St. Mary of the Angels and everything like that. We'll squeeze one.
St. Mary of the Angels? I think you said the wrong name there, Justin. Sorry. You meant St. Mary of the Sandwiches?
Yeah. I was like, maybe I said the wrong thing, but I don't think so. So you're gonna have to help me out here. But yeah, nice one. Okay. Let's see. Maybe we can get through this. But now we've got the fighting done. Now it's time for the politicking, because it's like we got our crescendo and everything, right? We got our peak, but it's like there's a lot of recap and like, cleanup and stuff like that happens in this book. So
yeah, no, we got the action peak done. We have the politicking peak to come, and this is phase 1 of politicking, because then they have to go to the Merlin and the council and all that, and that's even worse.
Oh, so gratifying, though. That's
yeah. Well, right now, yeah, it's the cleanup with Molly and understanding what she's done and convincing her to do the right thing and on and on and on and yeah. So they go back to St. Mary of the Sandwiches. I watched the reunion from a chair across the room and dozed, sitting up until Fort Hill returned with food. There weren't chairs enough for everyone, and Charity wound up sitting on the floor with her back to the wall, chomping down sandwiches while her children all tried to remain within touching distance. Yeah, I pulled out this quote and I don't remember the direct context, but laughter is good for you, I said. 9 out of 10 stand-up comedians recommend laughter in the face of intense stupidity. So, yeah. So then at some point, I think Molly's trying to sneak out and Dresden intercepts her, or he wakes her up to pull her off to the side to have a conversation, whatever. But he's starting to have a conversation of like, I think I know what you did and why you did it and everything. You were trying to use fear as a motivator for Rosie and Nelson, right? And everything. But I don't think, you realize how bad you hurt them. So she spun to me and shrieked, "I did not hurt them," which of course, is all the conviction we needed to change the facts. The air suddenly crackled with tension, vague, unfocused energy centered on the screaming girl. There was enough energy to manage something unfortunate, and it was clear that the kid wasn't in anything like control of her power. I shook my head and swung my left hand in a half circle, palm face out, and simply drew the magical energy her emotions had generated and grounded it into the earth before somebody got hurt. A tingle of sensation washed up my arm, surprisingly intense. Her talent was not a modest one. I started to snap a reprimand for her carelessness, but aborted it before the first word. In the first place, she was ignorant of what she'd done, not innocent, but not wholly at fault all the same. In the second place, she'd just been through a nightmarish ordeal at the hands of wicked fairies. She probably couldn't have controlled her emotions even if she wanted to. So it's just a fun scene, right? Like that very much I feel like needs to be included. And however we want to, portray the dancing magic, like anywhere from like, static electricity to, little shards of broken glass or whatever, like manifesting, around them as he just kind of like sweeps it away. And I didn't put it in here, but I remember her being surprised about it, right? That he was able to just like completely cancel out her magic and it just looked, nonchalant, as he did it and everything like that. So there's some fun there. And then he talks her into the soul gaze. So that's what we have here. But for a second, I thought nothing had happened. And when I realized the soul gaze was already up and running, and it showed me Molly standing and facing me as nothing more than she seemed to be. But I could see down the hall behind her, and the church's windows held a half a dozen different reflections. One was an emaciated version of Molly, as though she'd been starving or strung out on hard drugs, her eyes aglow with an unpleasant fade light. One was her smiling and laughing, older and comfortably heavier, children surrounding her. A third faced me in a gray warden's cloak, though a burned scar, almost a brand, marred the roundness of her left cheek. Still another reflection was Molly as she appeared now, though more secure, laughter dancing in her eyes. Another reflection showed her at a desk, working. But the last reflection of Molly wasn't the girl. Oh, it looked like Molly externally, but the eyes gave it away. They were flat as a reptile's, empty. She wore all black, including a black collar, and her hair had been dyed to match. Though she looked like Molly, like a human being, she was neither. She had become something else entirely, something very, very bad. So, Warlock or Nemesis, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but, So, Dresden convinces her, and this is her taste of, him also. She's not terrified of him like Susan was. So she saw something different, and we find out a little bit, more about what she saw later, with the one scene and everything like that. But I don't know. Are you guys good for time? I think I'm just going to push through because, like we're going to wind up with like 6 chapters otherwise. So, but basically they go back to the spare room, where the whole family is and everything like that. And, wake up Charity and ask her to come talk to them and everything like that. And, Dresden basically tells them the plan, that it's like, hey, I've got Molly's buy-in. We're going to go to the council and, we're going to see if we can save Molly's life, because one way or the other, the wardens are going to catch up to her. And I think the best shot she's got is that we go turn ourselves in more or less and, plea for clemency and that sort of thing. But like Charity, of course, does not take this well. And she starts, screaming, and she's upset and she's afraid and everything like that. But it's always, Molly's rebuttal that catches me, right? Mama, Molly said quietly, breaking in. Please tell me what Harry has done in the past 2 days to make you think that he is selfish or cowardly. Was it when he turned to face the ogres so that we could escape? Was it when he traded away the obligations the Summer Lady owed him to attempt the rescue? Charity was shocked silent for a second. Then her face heated, and she said, "Young lady, that isn't." Molly went on smoothly, her voice quiet, calm, displaying neither anger nor disrespect nor weakness. Or perhaps it was when you were unconscious and no one could have stopped him from simply taking me to turn over to the council, and he instead stopped to give me a choice. She chewed on her bottom lip for a second. You told me everything he's done since I was taken. Now he's offering to die for me, Mama. What more could you ask of him?
Preach it, sister.
Yeah, so now we've got Charity all upset and everything like that. And now, she's trying to, appeal to everybody and Fort Hill and everything like that. So I don't have the preceding line, but it's something like, like she's my child, something along those lines. And she was, Fort Hill corrected her, if only for a time. Children are a precious gift, but they belong to no one but themselves. They are only lent to us a little while. The priest folded his arms over his chest and leaned against the doorway. I think you should consider what has happened, Charity. Dresden is perhaps the only one who could have helped you and Molly. I think it no accident that he became involved in the situation. He gave me a whimsical little smile. After all, he does work in mysterious ways.
Meaning Uriel.
No, meaning he, the capital.
Oh, yeah, but he
Uriel's just his
through
background,
Uriel.
Yeah, sure. That's like saying, give thanks to my left hand because, give it thanks to the big brain up top running everything. So just saying.
Mab and Rashid and Uriel all conspiring. That's all.
Sure. Yeah. She, being Charity, stared at me for a moment. Then she looked up and said to Fort Hill, I wish Michael was here. Fort Hill asked her if he was. What do you think he would say? Her eyes moved back to me and she said, frowning faintly, to have faith, to trust the wizard, that he is a good man. The priest nodded. I think he would say that too. Is it raining inside for anybody else or is that just me? So, so I don't remember if it's Molly or Fort Hill that references it, but more argument to be had and everything like that. But there's some conversation about Molly. I think Molly says it actually. There's some conversation about Molly giving up her power, and she's like, "Well, I'm not going to do that." And Charity starts to argue with her, and then she's like, "Mama, what about the talents?" And like, "Don't you quote the scriptures to me, child? The ones that I raised you on and taught you, and how dare you have a different interpretation than me?" And Dresden, being suicidal, raises his hand to interrupt and says, I haven't heard this one. Because
conveniently, because other times he can also quote scripture. He's just the dumb person in the room.
There is a 0% chance Dresden doesn't know this scripture compared to some of the other things that he's referenced. But we've got Molly, Charity, and Fort Hill and Dresden having a conversation. Which one of them's the idiot right now?
This is where you bring Thomas back in for just the question of like,
Sure.
I don't know scripture. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Right. You've got like little Harry is like, Mama, what's the talents? Or something. So, but yeah, no, I see it exactly. Right. So Fort Hill tells him the story, whatever. I pulled it out here and, we can skip over for time, but, Dresden's like, oh, well, Stanley said it better, or at least faster. Sorry, Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. Which also, there's a 0% chance Fort Hill doesn't know that. Like, that's like so ubiquitous, but whatever. So maybe he just didn't realize which Spider-Man reference in the moment. He's like, I'm sorry, but there's like so much Spider-Man. Can you narrow this down for me just a little bit? So. Molly laid her head in Charity's lap. You know how bad things are out there. I have a chance to make a difference. I want to help. Something inside the steely will of Michael's wife suddenly broke. She gathered Molly up into a hug and just held her there while she shivered. Then Charity whispered, "Of course you do. You're your father's child. How could you want anything else?" Let's see. Okay. So Dresden is talking to Fort Hill, and I think they're, commiserating again about how everybody really wishes Michael was here. And man, if they would just be patient for like, another day.
Mhm. He
and
will
everything
show
like
up
that. But
exactly at the most opportune time.
yes, a paladin is never late, nor is he early. He always arrives precisely when he intends him to. So, anyway, so Fort Hill's talking like maybe the Almighty didn't send Michael away right when he was needed to protect his daughter. Maybe he sent Michael away because that's exactly what he wanted him to do. I let out a short little laugh. If I'm wrong, it would be one hell of a coincidence. I frowned for a moment, then said, "Do me a favor. Go get Molly for me. Council procedures say that I can't leave her alone. I've got to keep her with me until it's done." He rose and nodded, agreeable if still slightly baffled. "Very well. And I need to know something, Father. Do you know where Michael is right now?" Fort Hill shook his head. "Could you get word to him?" I asked. "I mean, if you really had to." He tilted his head, frowning, and asked, "Why?" "Because I have an idea. Can you get in touch with him?" Fort Hill smiled. "I mean, it's not like you can call him on the phone, but, pray. So,
And
be like,
yeah, having angels at your beck and call does kind of mean something.
yes, you got to send me the nicest angel that you have." And then they sent Stitch to tell Michael that Molly was in danger. No, sorry. Okay. All right. Let's see. So they get everybody together and head to the warehouse. I think Dresden makes his phone call. I'm skipping over some of these details, right? He makes his phone call. The warden is very young because many wardens have died in the last year or so, and it's like, I don't know. And he's like, "Kick it up the ladder. They're gonna want this one. Tell them that the regional commander said so, and it's my right to do this." Yeah, okay, that I guess that makes sense, So
Kick it up the I mean, not my problem. Sounds good.
right, exactly. Like I'm pulling rank, I'm Harry Dresden. They're gonna know all of what that means. And
Yeah,
then
but
you
they
could
don't
just
like you.
maybe I'm not a huge fan of this, but I think it'd be hilarious to like add in a scene where it's like the Merlin just barely gets to sit down with his tea, and it's like, "Sir, Harry Dresden's on the phone." He's just like, "Fuck," or just something. It's like you could just see him roll his eyes or just be completely exasperated, or
And
you
that's
know,
why he was so desperate to cut off Molly's head.
sure. I mean, obviously, like the son of a bitch interrupted my tea time, So, so he tells him to meet at the usual place and that he wants Warden Ramirez running security. So they take the details and they're going to go back to the warehouse that we know and we'll see again and everything like that. And for context, I think, he goes, Ramirez is obviously running security. I don't remember if I pulled it out, but he starts to argue with Ramirez at one point. It's like, "Look, if you didn't want me running security, why did you ask for me to run security?" And so Dresden kind of tries to chill out and everything like that. And then Ramirez is like, "Look, we're buddies, so I need you to know that like only the Merlin is here and only the gatekeeper is otherwise like accounted for, and he doesn't always show up to meetings. And so the Merlin has like everybody's proxy, you know." And so Dresden's like, "Fine, I can deal with this." Ramirez arched an eyebrow at me. "I thought you'd look more upset. Would it help anything if I started foaming at the mouth?" "No, it might explain a few things, but it wouldn't help per se."
Wait, no, he doesn't need to foam at the mouth or anything, but you can deal with the Merlin alone? No, you fucking can't.
Yeah, Ramirez knows whatever is going on that Dresden has a plan, because he made some very specific requests to not have thought this through. So, and that's, I think that's what Ramirez is like, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Is like, Dresden asked me to run security. God damn it. Like, I thought we were friends, Dresden. So it's just like, what do you think is going to happen here that, Ramirez is on extra heightened security alert because it's Dresden, So yeah, it's like Dresden's going to do something, or something chasing Dresden's going to do something, let alone all the normal shit that I'd be looking out for, So let's see. So they're going back and forth, and Ramirez, well, crap. He scowled at me. "You gonna turn this into some kind of fight?" Los, would I do that? He gave me a steady look and then said, "You just had to ask me to handle security." What can I say, man? No one else was pretty and talented enough. No one is so talented that you couldn't make him look bad, Dresden, he muttered. Then he gave Lily and Fix a calculating look and said, "Well, this should be interesting at any rate. Introduce me." That's right. So yeah, they show up while he's having the conversation. He's like, he gets all tense and almost pulls his gun, and then it's like, "Oh, they're visiting dignitaries," and it's like, "You didn't tell me they were coming." So then he goes to, Black Hood Molly and everything like that, and Dresden bristles again and just like, it's protocol, dude. If we go in there without her hooded, they're just going to pass summary judgment and cut her friggin' head off. And so Dresden takes the hood, tells Molly, "Trust me, it's going to be okay," and then puts it on her and everything. And he starts being like, this is all starting to sound familiar, but the last time I was here, I was on the other side, So yay, empathy. But let's see. Okay, so we go in. They start having the conversation. Merlin starts, in Latin, and Harry is like, "Oh, you sneaky son of a bitch!" But I was ready for you. So he's like, "Well, point of order. We've got visiting foreign dignitaries, and they may not speak Latin. So does everybody here speak English?" And the Merlin kind of has to begrudgingly get rid of it so that Dresden doesn't look like, completely incompetent because he can't speak the language of court. So
yeah, to a certain extent, Harry has Lash right now. He could have had her translate, which he is not willing to do yet, but give it a book.
Right. He doesn't know yet. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. But Harry has 3 plays, essentially. Like, he doesn't have that many actions that he can do in this thing. Sure. And spends one of them on making everything English instead of speaking Latin. I don't know. Just like, he had to do child level action because he's the only one who can't play on the level field.
Well, maybe, but like the Lily and Fix thing has multiple levels, right? He didn't just bring them so that he could speak English. That was just a happy byproduct of them being there. And what's funny though too is, like, if I was the Merlin, like, I mean, maybe this would be perceived as an insult as why he doesn't do it, but it's like, Lily can almost certainly speak Latin. Maybe Fix doesn't get that by proxy, right? But it's like, I don't think they're insulting Lily by holding, the meeting in Latin, because it's like, of all the Fae powers, I gotta imagine her speaking Latin is not the most extraneous one, whether by magic or she's studied since then or whatever the excuse would be. It would not be a stretch for me to understand that she knows Latin,
Yeah, I could believe that being one of the Fae courts of being lady and knight actually gives you the ability to just understand any language that you need to speak to at any time for something official. And Harry is just too stupid to realize it and never ask the fucking question.
But what's more, though, the Merlin also doesn't know, because the Merlin doesn't just dismiss it and say, "That's fucking stupid. They, of course, speak Latin," or Lily screwed Dresden by saying, "Oh, actually, no, it's fine. I can speak Latin," and volunteer the information, right? So this is one of those things, like, everything has to go exactly as it's laid out, because then, Michael shows up. But if you like tilt his elbow and they start speaking Latin, then the whole thing goes to shit. So. But also, the readers don't speak Latin either. So maybe that's it. Maybe we're the idiots in the room this time.
It's not like we had to read Ancient Etruscan to have the conversation he had in Ancient Etruscan.
Right. Yeah, sure. I get it. Yeah, so they recognize them first. That's one of his 2 orders of business and why he brought everybody together. And that, Lily and Fix want to, bequeath a reward. And like, one of the things I skipped over is like, Ramirez saying that basically everybody's going to be extra tense because they just had a fight, and that Morgan got within like 20 feet of the Red King, which apparently the Summer Court has already heard about, even though Dresden just found out. And so they're there with the Silver Oak Leaf, the award of the Silver Oak Leaf, or whatever the hell it is, the MacGuffin of the day for it. And they recognize Morgan for his intense bravery and all of that stuff. So, and part of it is just to, like, nobody else on the council has or possibly has even heard of this, award. But, Fix is like, hey, it's nothing to sneeze at. So it's definitely a thing, totally
Hey,
not made
you
up
a
just in this
favor
moment.
from
Yeah.
the summer court.
Right.
I mean, it was a
And
favor.
also, yeah. But a big part of it too is like leveling the playing field, at least perceptively, between Dresden and Morgan. Morgan being the fist of the White Council, and then turning around and giving the same thing to Dresden, and being able to tell their version of the story of Dresden, leading an assault directly on Arctis Tor into the heart of winter, and all of this other stuff. And Dresden's like, okay, but there's more to that story. And Fix is like, yeah, but nothing she said is factually incorrect either. So they're still having this side conversation. Why, I muttered under my breath, do I get the feeling that Titania handing me a medal can't possibly be as simple as it looks? Because you can tell a hawk from a handsaw when the wind is southerly, Lily murmured in reply. But it offers you some benefit today, she smiled at me. Surely you didn't actually expect a summer queen to simply do as you bid her and no more? So you invited us to meddle, and so we are gonna meddle. So with that stuff out of the way and everything like that, they move on to the second point, which is he's brought a warlock, and everyone's like, we don't got time for warlocks, so we mostly just chop off their heads. But we'll go through that anyway. Part of the procedure is to make sure that they've been soul gazed by a warden and has confirmed their guilt, because that's not something you can hide from a soul gaze, at least presumably. I think Dresden says that he's done it because, regional commander in the area, but then Ramirez has to second it and everything like that. Ramirez has also examined the victims. So Ramirez stepped forward. I've done so, Merlin. The psychic trauma was serious, but it's my belief that both will recover. The Merlin eyed Ramirez. Is that your opinion, Warden Ramirez, based no doubt on your extensive experience? Ramirez's eyes glittered with anger at the Merlin's tone. It is the opinion of the duly appointed regional commander of the Western United States, he replied. I believe that the Merlin should remember that he personally appointed me, if it hasn't faded into a blur of senility. So, let's insult the kids who have earned their post, and expect not to get shitty back. So... of course, Morgan admonishes him as the acting commander of the wardens. He can't have him mouth off to his boss unchallenged, but
yeah, I'll just do some push-ups and fuck it.
Yeah. So then he does the same thing to Dresden with the whole soul gaze with Molly. So thank you for your opinion, Warden Dresden. His voice turned drolly unapologetic, doubtless offered to us out of your own extensive experience. I beg your pardon, Merlin, but when it comes to the council sitting in self-righteous, arrogant judgment over a young wizard who made an honest mistake, I believe I have more experience than anyone in this room. And that's when he realized he done fucked up. Yep. So... because he overplayed his hand and he backed him into a corner, and he 100% beat him, but he 100% does not have the power right now. And so now he's going to kill Molly just to spite him. So, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God.
Yeah, why did Dresden think that, it's just the Merlin that I have to face down and no one else comes to my aid? Yeah, I can totally do that. It's just he should be more worried about that, even if he has the secondary and tertiary plans to help and he's taking Michael's leap of faith and all of that stuff good, he should still be fucking worried.
Well, he still almost fucks it up, right? Yeah. So we'll see here anyway, but it's I think this is just him learning the hard lesson on politics, that it's just because you won doesn't mean that you got what you wanted, right? It's you beat him on a personal level, but he's still the face of the council, and right now he is the entire executioner's axe, despite Morgan being the one holding the sword in this case. It's like, you do still need his buy-in a little bit, and if you had just let him somehow save face, that part's never clear to me either. It's like, if you had somehow been more conciliatory and stroked his ego, then maybe he would have bargained with you or something. But none of
It's
that is
not
here.
in Dresden's
And
nature to
exactly,
ever stroke an ego.
that's very much a big part of it too, is that Dresden played it like a Dresden. He's going to go hard. He's got all the facts. He's going to be right and still lose, and almost cost Molly his life, or her life. So I promised Charity. I took my staff in both hands and stepped forward, putting myself between Morgan and the girl. Morgan, I said, stars in stone, man. Please don't do this. She's a child. We should be helping her. My words slowed him, and he froze in place for a terrible heartbeat. Then he closed his eyes and swallowed, his face twisting with nausea. He opened his eyes again and whispered, stand aside, Dresden, please. I looked wildly around the room for anyone to help, for some way to stop this madness. I felt sudden pressure against my spine and looked over my shoulder. My eyes fell on the gatekeeper. So, that's a magic he can do. Just saying.
Yeah, that Rashid can just stare at you and then like, oh,
Right.
somebody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Could also just be instinct. I don't know.
I know. But I whirled back to Morgan and lifted my hands. Point of order, I cried. Point of order. The senior council has not yet made its decision. Morgan paused, head tilting, and frowned at me. He lowered the sword and glanced back at the Merlin. The senior council has decided the issue, the Merlin snarled. No, the senior council must decide any capital crime in an open vote. I pointed my finger at the gatekeeper. He has not cast his vote. The Merlin spoke through clenched teeth. I hold 6 of 7 votes. However, the honored gatekeeper decides it will not change the outcome. True, but that doesn't change the fact that it gets a damned vote. Like the best scene in the whole book, in my opinion. Like just the whole time, and you're like, the first time I'm reading it in Dresden, and I'm like, oh shit, are they going to actually kill her? And then, perfect, obviously. So
deliberation.
Yeah, right. So yeah, we have the whole like, okay, well, how does the honor gatekeeper vote? With great deliberation. And he just sits there for 5 minutes, just like deliberating, because
I could just imagine Uriel almost like sending beams into the gatekeeper's head, like, okay, just stall. We're almost there.
I know, right?
5 minutes.
Yeah, the gate. I mean, I guess they're inside a circle. Otherwise, I'd think that the gatekeeper is like got some divination magic going on, right? Maybe if the eye is,
something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, maybe he's cut through it somehow or something. But yeah, he stands there, and his excuse is like, yes, I mean, how I vote doesn't matter to the outcome, but how, like, it does not absolve me of the moral weight of my decision. And so the Merlin's like, okay, well, we can wait for just a few minutes while you decide. And so he stands there motionless for 5 friggin' minutes, waiting for, Ebenezer, and listens to Wind and Michael and all the kids and Lucio running. Like, that's what I want to see. It's like, well, we'll have 5 minutes of spliced back and forth of like the gatekeeper just standing there while everybody else is like fighting and running, And then
I think it's better if you show how long he's been waiting. I mean, not sitting there for nothing happening for 5 minutes, but everybody getting impatient. Like even Dresden is going like, what the fuck is going on? And then everyone just falls out of a portal in a tumble, and it's like, okay.
Right. Almost. But yeah, the portal's outside and everything. So yeah, enough, the Merlin said finally. This travesty needs to end. On that point, the gatekeeper said, we agree. And then he stepped forward to the circle marked on the floor and smudged it with his boot, breaking the circle. He flicked a gloved hand, and the lock on the chain door sprang open and fell away, followed closely by the chains. What is the meaning of this? The Merlin demanded. The gatekeeper ignored him and pushed open the door. So he magically unlocked it from a distance, and then didn't force push the door. He had to physically go open the door. I was like, okay. Anyway, one of the wardens on guard outside stood in front of it, one hand raised as if to knock. He blinked at the gatekeeper and then looked over his shoulder and said, it's open, sir. Get clear of the door, fool, barked Ebenezer's voice. Get them inside. Hurry, man. They're right behind us. So everybody runs inside. We've got the kids. We've got Lucio herding the kids. We've got Michael, we've got Listens to Wind and Ebenezer, and they get out a med kit, start tending to one of the wardens who was wounded, that sort of thing. And the Merlin comes up to stand next to Dresden and just kind of watch everything. Vote isn't over, I said in a very quiet voice, which means that the three of them will need to cast their votes as well. Obviously, the Merlin said in a neutral murmur. That's Michael, Knight of the Cross. Which sword? The Merlin asked idly. Amarachius. The Merlin lifted a brow and nodded, never looking at me. I just love the fact that it's like, despite that they hate each other and everything, just the professionalism,
Dresden's gloating, and he's not being very professional, but the Merlin is just like...
he knows he's been beaten, and
yes,
the pettiness is past, so... Yeah. But...
To a certain extent... people aren't asking fucking questions. If you think about the damage that would have happened if Merlin had successfully killed Molly, killed the child of Michael, the wielder of Amarachius, how bad that would have been. And so of course, Dresden has saved his ass, and that's not commented on. But it could have been something that Dresden said of look who her parents are. Right. She's got the potential of redemption, and he never plays that card.
That's true. Yeah. That I agree with. Unfortunately, the nature of the swords, right? If Michael had attacked them in vengeance, if the power was his to wield, I fully expect he could have decapitated the White Council there, certainly with his rage and that sort of thing. But the angel would have been powerless to help him. And so Michael would have just had a sword and rage.
You would have broken Amarachius, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
so
then how bad would reality be? And then the Denarians or the outsiders would have won because Uriel outsiders gatekeeping.
Invoking Uriel for the umpteenth time. I fully believe Uriel knew that was going to happen. If we don't figure out some way to intervene here, this is going to get real bad real fast, And I didn't pull it out of my notes, but I think one of the final things that, he says to the Merlin is that, Michael just saved a bunch of our kids. Don't you think it'd be right if we saved one of his, and just another great little, pushes buttons one more time, but, he needs to know. And interesting, does the Merlin change his vote? We don't really see that. We just know that the vote goes against him, ultimately. So, and I wonder if Ebenezer plays the middle ground and say, well, it's only right and proper that Dresden carry the Doom of Damocles, right? And so that's olive branch to the Merlin of we're not going to let you execute this girl, but you don't lose entirely today. It's just stayed. It's a stay of execution until such time she proves that she can't be trusted,
Yeah. I mean, that might be the only good outcome for it. They might not have okay, you're innocent, you get to go and be completely free. They might only have you get the doom or nothing.
Yeah, the doom or dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The doom is either enacted immediately or, with a little bit of a delay. So, okay, last couple of chapters here. So Michael and Dresden talking, etc. Dresden asks a question, which is a shocker. So brace yourself. But Ebenezer said something about outsiders. Yes. And now that you mention it, apparently his magic had difficulty dealing with them. I shook my head. I'm glad you were with them. Under the circumstances, so am I. He pursed his lips thoughtfully. You assumed that I had been sent to help the White Council so that they would show mercy to my daughter. I shrugged. It was either that or else I was the man meant to look out for her, which meant that it was possible for me to do so. So I decided to lean on the Merlin. Michael blinked and stared at me. If I do not mistake your meaning, you just told me that you took a leap of faith. No, I took your leap of faith by proxy. I shook my head. Look, Michael, I try to stay out of God's way as much as I possibly can. I don't expect him to send a rescue party for me if I'm in trouble, despite having done so.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
a few times probably.
It is the thinnest of excuses, and he's going to hide wildly behind it, and I'm okay with it.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, I don't recall this one, but this one's to Molly, if I recall correctly, at least. But rule number 1 of the wizarding business, I said, never let them see you sweat. People expect us to know things. It can be a big advantage. Don't screw it up by looking like you're as confused as everybody else. Bad for the image. So, uh, yeah, so he takes her back to his apartment for a variety of reasons. You know, and you know, she makes the excuse to get cleaned up at some point. I think we're not quite there yet, but right now they're having a conversation of like, you're my apprentice. These are the rules. If you screw them up, we both die, and I'm not going to let that happen. And she gets to be a defiant teenager for a minute. I narrowed my eyes, clenched my fist, and hissed a single word. The fireplace flared up in a sudden fiery cyclone. Molly flinched back from it, one arm lifted to protect her eyes. When she lowered it, I was hunkered down right in her face. I'm not your parents, kid, I said, and you don't have time to play teenage rebel anymore. This is the deal. You do what I say, or you don't survive. I leaned closer and gave her the look I usually save for rampaging demons and those survey people at the malls. Molly, is there any doubt in your mind, any doubt at all, that I can't damn well make you do it? Which I think in the moment, she's like, oh my God, he could do the mind magic to me like I did to Rosie and Nelson. And she
Mhm.
probably still has not connected the fact that it's like, he's not going to do it through mind magic because the laws of magic, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the context she's in because that's what she knows of magic, right? But he's like, I will kick your ass up and down Chicago until you decide to do what needs to be done anyway, you know? So,
I'm not even sure he could. I mean, maybe. But okay, at the time here, I'm not sure he would be able to because partly he thinks it's wrong, even laws of magic aside, and magic
Sure.
requires intent, and it's just not where his skill set is. Like
oh,
I
the
don't-
mind magic?
yeah, the mind
for
magic.
sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't think he would be.
She
able to.
doesn't know any of that yet, right?
Yeah.
So he's leaning on, you know, her naivety a little bit, and the fact that it's like, I was also a stubborn asshole teenager, and so I'm not going to let you get your feet so that you can plant them to be stubborn with me. I'm going to keep you off balance, and you know, you absolutely need to know that I'm doing this for both of our best interests, whether you like it or not, you know. So
How stupid did she gotta be though? Like she
pretty dumb.
literally almost
She's
died executed because of being a stubborn teenager, and she just turns around and does it again. It's just like
I
not
mean,
even
some
5 minutes later.
yeah, some of it is stupid kid, right? But it, like, the rules that we understand in the universe are the warlocks can't help themselves, right? And so she thinks that magic is the cause of and solution to all of her problems. And so until she gets out of that mindset, right now she has a hammer, and she doesn't realize, like, yes, it's a tool, but also it's a weapon, and it can hurt you as easily as everybody else, let alone it can also hang up pretty pictures, you know. And so everything looks like a nail, everything looks like I've got this tool, I can fix it, you know. But that's not it. It's more like, you know, I don't know, it's more like she's using a rocket launcher as a hammer, and be like, kid, you are going to hurt yourself and everybody around you if you don't employ that properly, you know. So she sasses back at Dresden, but I continued over her as if she hadn't spoken. Not only that, but you're going to do everything in your power to be the most respectful, loving, respectful, considerate, and respectful daughter in the whole wide world, especially where your mom is concerned. She stared at me with her jaw hanging. Oh, and you're going to go back to high school until you're finished. She stared at me
We've
for a
skipped
long
over a few
time.
things, but
Yeah, probably. What do you want? What do you want to include?
Well, I guess I expected a conversation about when then she again tries to seduce him, and it's weird and
That's
awkward.
still later.
Is
That's
it really?
still
Because I thought
later.
that she had this
Yeah.
conversation in the car after, like she was like, "Oh, we're gonna go take you to wherever you're gonna live again," and she was aghast to find out it was her parents' house.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let's see.
I think going to her parents' house is the end, and the other things, or like the naked Molly, has happened somewhere
Yes,
between that and the council meeting.
it was just the respectful and loving and
Yeah,
respectful
okay.
and going back to high school, and then just like
So that's
that was like
yeah. I'm surprised that I didn't pull it out. Maybe I expected I remember in the moment and whatever, but yeah, you're right. This is on their doorstep, I think, where we're having this conversation because he's like, I'm going to take you to your new digs. And then they show up at the carpenter's house. And, but wait, no. But yes, she does try to do the seducing thing. And he's like, yeah, I guessed, it's not uncommon. You've got heightened survival. We just survived a thing. I'm also a human, but also you're an apprentice and I'm a master and it's never going to happen, so that sort of thing.
and depending on the age of consent laws and all that shit, because she's still a minor. But
Yeah.
again, how stupid does she have to be? That's terrible timing.
No comments. There's no comment that's not going to get me in trouble here. So, like,
I got nothing. I got nothing to add here.
I mean, her fixation on him, it makes sense. Sure.
Yeah.
She's bad at it.
Well,
She's stupid.
yeah, she's 17, duh, and one of the things that I did pull out with the whole, like, he's like, are you sexually active? I've been around most of the bases, it's like, she's like, oh yes, I've had the sex many times. Like, yeah, no, you don't.
But then he does say one of the stupidest things that you could say to a teenager, which is don't masturbate because you'll go blind.
Right. Yes. But she's in the mode of like trying to like understand and trust everything he's saying. And then he switches to a joke mid sentence and she doesn't catch on, so.
Well, she's quite concerned about it. She's like, you're joking,
Yes.
right? Like,
yeah, because
that won't-
maybe
it's not
that's
really-
a thing that happens to wizards, right? Maybe wizards
Yeah.
can go blind, so. Like mom and dad always told me I go blind, but now I actually might believe it for a second, so. Let's see. Anyway, yeah, and I think he makes the comment for when he hits her with the glass ice water pitcher, not like the glass but the water, but it's like I'm basically your version of a rock star in your head, right? It's like you've got some serious hero worship, so she's shooting her shot, but unfortunately she's like a stormtrooper and had no chance, so that's what happened. But okay. So you're going, nerd. So, you're going back to high school until you're finished. She stared at me for a long time. I died, and this is hell. I snorted. If you can't control yourself well enough to finish a basic education and get along with a house full of people who love you, then you sure as hell can't control yourself enough to use what I need to teach you. So, really good point.
Fair point. A fair point.
Yeah. And the best part is like he can, put a ton of leverage, like 2/3 of his leverage on her, and he doesn't even have to do a damn thing about it. He just has to kind of like observe, and people will report back to him. It's like, the carpenters are going to parent her and the school's going to school her, and then he can focus on the wizarding thing instead of having to do all three jobs, instead of having to parent her and, give her a basic education and teach her magic. So, yeah. But then, I assume you're sexually active technically. He's like, technically, I've explored most of the bases. I see. Well, Magellan, no base running or bodily going where no man has gone before you, not until you get yourself grounded. Sex makes things complicated, and for you that could be bad. And no solo exploration either. She blinked at me and asked in a blank tone, why? You'll go blind, I said, and walked up to her front porch. You're joking. That's a joke, right, Harry? So I like that he makes a Star Trek reference because she's a Star Trek nerd. I wonder if he knows that about her by this point, maybe in passing, but it's never really come up. Maybe this is where the author decided she's going to be a Star Trek nerd to be a foil and that sort of thing for it. But
she's also the one who says that you can like both now. You can come out of the nerd closet. It's okay.
Yes.
We're accepting nowadays. Progressive.
I also would like to
tolerance.
point out that Dresden has some specific experience here, but also hypocrisy because he and Elaine were very sexually active, while he was trying to learn how to control his magic. So
He didn't have the same kind of problems that she did, and sure, she should be more grounded and all that stuff. But he never revisits this with the second sex talk of like, here's how to have sex and be a wizard and be safe. Like wizard STDs or whatever the fuck happened to Herbie.
Jesus,
and
don't. Why? We don't need that. We didn't need
Day off.
conjuritis. We didn't need conjuritis. We sure as fuck don't need
Kirby and Andy
okay,
already got fleas. Come on.
it was
Like,
magical fleas. That's not technically an STD. They were just close when it happened. So like it was transmitted sexually, but not because it was an STD. So,
how else do you think you get crabs? Actually,
well, fuck. I don't want you to be right, but you are. So I have to admit it because it's the right thing to do. But like, damn it. All right, moving on. So we also cut over to a conversation with Ebenezer. So if I've cut out your other favorite sex talk or something like that, feel free to jump in. But the parts that I pulled out was just them mostly talking about the Black Council and everything like that. But I lowered my voice to a whisper. A new power is moving around out there. Something big, smart, strong, and sneaky as hell. Something with a lot of strength and magical know-how. I licked my lips. Put that together with the evidence of the varied powers, wolf belts handed out to those poor FBI bastards, black magic being taught to small timers like the Shadow Man and the Nightmare, vampires cross-training in one another in sorcery, hellfire used in Arctis Tor, and of course, the White Council's highly placed traitor. All of that together doesn't point to just one person. It indicates an organization. I regarded the old man steadily, and they've got wizards on the staff, probably several of them. Damn. I was hoping maybe I was starting to go senile, but I came to the same conclusion. He nodded. Boy, don't breathe a word of this, not to anyone. I got the feeling that this information is worth as much as your life. He shook his head. Let me think about who else needs to know.
And
Presumably listens to
the
Wind.
formation of the Grey Council starts.
You're right. Yeah.
I think Ebenezer
So-
immediately says he'll vouch for listens to Wind, and then Dresden says that he'll vouch for Rashid. So they decide those four are safe.
Right. Yep. And now we got, an actual council instead of just like, two dudes. So, yeah. So next thing,
So can you make some spin on the whole where it's like 2's to something, 3's a crowd, and we go 4's a council? In some way that makes sense. That would be good.
Sure. One too many lots. So, you always told me you weren't at my trial, that the council saddled you with me because you skipped out. I think that isn't true, he grunted. It was all in Latin, which I didn't understand then, and I had that hood over my head, so I couldn't see anyone, but someone had to have defended me the way I did Molly. Could be. He rolled one shoulder in a shrug. I'm getting pretty old, Haas. I forget things. I've missed a meal or three lately, and I know this little joint that's got the best spaghetti in town. Ebenezer froze in place like a man walking on ice who suddenly hears cracking sounds. Oh? They've got this great bread that goes with it too, and it's right by the campus, so cute waitresses. Sounds promising, Ebenezer said. Makes me a mite hungry hearing about it. Absolutely. Let me get my shoes. If we hurry, we can get there before the evening rush.
My grandkid wants to go out for dinner. I'm so excited. I just can't show it. And I knocked my camera over.
Jesus.
Yeah. He was
That's
so
what-
excited.
yeah.
Camera
Well,
died.
I'm using the phone, so it's a bit unstable because it's just standing on books.
Sure. I mean, I do find it odd that like spaghetti is what they went for. Like maybe I missed that scene when, I was in Chicago, but like, I feel like there's 3 other like staple foods that would have come up, but maybe spaghetti is the finest in sit down dining that Dresden could afford and think of. In the
Yeah,
moment,
affordability is probably a big problem.
Yeah.
It's nice that they reconcile.
For now, for like 4 books.
I mean, It's
So
still good enough. I mean, for a long time, it's like their relationship gets to go back to being functional and all that. But like, Dresden's animosity to Ebenezer for you lied to me. It's like, you lie to everybody. Hypocrite.
yeah, like Ebenezer just lied to him just now. Like I'm old and I forget things. I'm
Yeah,
like, I mean, that's a true statement, but that doesn't address what Dresden's talking about, So
Yeah.
or how about the fact that it's like they just had this whole conversation about how like, you know, like I got the impression anyway that it was understood that Thomas was involved in the Arctis tour thing, but maybe those details got left out of it. But it's like there's a 0% chance that that Ebenezer doesn't know that Thomas is running around with Dresden. Like I don't buy that for a minute. And so
I mean,
like
this
the
is
fact that it
after
becomes
Blood
this-
Rights, in which that was a whole thing. So
Right.
that's gonna. They were living together.
Right. I mean, there's just a lot of things where I got to imagine Ebenezer would have been able to know it to suddenly be upset about it later. And I mean, if you think that's bad, just wait until, you have a vampire granddaughter. So that you threatened to murder once. Just saying, I wonder if he brings her shoes for the wedding.
He wouldn't pay that price.
maybe some combat boots or something. Be like, if you're going to come to the farm, you're going to need these. So,
But that would be an
Ebenezer,
invitation.
I guess we're related now.
True. Right? Yeah. By law, not by blood. We're going to find out in like 5 months. So, soon, hopefully. God, man.
Mhm.
Let's move that downstream so we can figure out what the next thing's going to be or start speculating about that.
Oh, we've been speculating on Mirror for fucking years.
Well, yeah, not
Years
just
and
mirror
years.
mirror. I mean their relationship specifically in this context.
Ah.
Like, yeah, I think we got a decent handle on mirror mirror until the next book comes out, and then obviously we're going to be like, oh wait, shit. We'll find out like if EG is right, and the book ends with him like falling out of bed in an alternate universe or something. But
Oh, he gets pulled through
But
a
yeah.
mirror. Come on.
clearly, which is very important right now because that's how the fetches got around, right? The fetches got around through mirrors, so it should be like right on the tip of your brain thinking that. So,
I think Laura's gonna die
but why?
because everyone else he's loved has died.
I know, but like we just had that, and I don't know if we've gotten to the point where he's going to carry yet. So like they got to come a long ways, presumably
doesn't
in
need to-
12 months.
Her death doesn't need to be something that he is completely broken up. He'll be broken up of just because it was like she's been around for a long time and then she's gone, and then it just feels that's different. And also it probably means bad things for like the state of their team reality forces and all that stuff. And Thomas might be upset, but it doesn't need to be on the same level as Murphy. It's just that like women who get involved with him die.
The point is to hurt us though. And so we don't care so much right now, certainly not compared to Murphy, so it would be a waste, I feel like, if he did it. That's what I'm saying. It's like anybody could die at any time. I mean, Thomas could shrivel up and die or go insane right now that he's trapped on the island and whatever, right? But I mean, Dresden's like, oh yeah, the only way I can think to save my brother is to lock him up with 6 other Nagloshi, like the one that fucking tortured him almost to death, right? So that'll be a good time.
They're all in isolation, right? They're all
He's in a
Right,
different
and none of-
protocol, whatever that
Yeah.
means.
None of the prisoners can talk to each other, of course.
Except for that
So-
one person.
That would be really
he just
bad.
said.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to distract. I'm just saying like there are other more impactful deaths than just to have Laura. It's like that's like, if one of Laura's sisters died, like, oh no, that sucks. That was a strong, powerful white court vampire. Like, that's undersells it obviously for Laura's case, but he doesn't care about her right now. So it wouldn't be as impactful as it could be. But everybody knows it's like, when the hero or tertiary characters like love interest shows up, it's like, oh yeah, that person's going to be a goner. It's like, we've never seen or heard from your boyfriend or spouse or whomever this is the entire time of the show, and they suddenly become important. I don't think they're going to make it out of this episode, and they're certainly not going to make it out of this season, so
Yeah. Like, oh, you're about to retire. You're 2 days away from retirement, and then you're too old for
Right.
this shit.
Why would you say that out loud?
Rollins
Yeah.
cut it close a little, but
Yeah. You say, I'm never quitting. So until they show up with a cake, and then you're like, finally, I made it to retirement. So, well, so White Knight in 2 weeks.
okay.
We'll get cracking.
Alrighty.